So, Jared, I think you can proceed. As usual, we will do 10 minutes. We'll ring the bell after 7 minutes, and then you will have 3 minutes to conclude your presentation. And then after they present, you take question for the presenter. Then we will ask our questions after they have made all their presentations.
Okay, good morning. I'm Jared, and I'll be presenting on a comparison of properties of deep fried and microwave potato chips. And the presenters and potato chips are popular snacks and mostly consumed in urban areas. Mostly they are prepared by peeling, slicing, and of medium-sized potatoes, then frying. Deep frying is commonly used, but it's slow, energy intensive, and may lead to loss of nutrients. Microwaving saves a lot of energy and its time. When it comes to microwaving, we are trying to deal with the polar components in our chips. And in this case, we are trying to use the waves to steam up the potatoes so that we can have chips out of them. So the interaction between the polar components in the chips, in the potatoes, makes it possible to make chips out of the potatoes. Then the interactions of the waves and the polar components plus the salt components in the potatoes helps in fastening the process of microwaving, making the process a bit faster. Also, in the program, we are currently dealing with trying to minimize the level of fats in our foods, and in that case, we have several lifestyle diseases that are coming up based on what we eat, and in that case, eating chips because it's a snack and it's being used each and every day makes it pile up each and every day. So trying to reduce the level of fat in our foods, this is our case now, we are trying to reduce the level of oil in our chips. So producing low-fat chips will be our next thing. So my main objective here is to compare the deep frying method and microwave processing method. And to be specific is to compare the fat content of the chips which have been produced using microwave and that of deep fried. Then determine the approximate composition. Then also consider the time taken so that we can easily see whether it's time efficient or not. Also to evaluate the sensory properties of our chips. In our methodology, we used the shangi type of potatoes, which were washed, assorted, washed, peeled, and sliced. Then equal quantities were prepared and using two different methods. For the fry method, we used 400 ml of oil, which was heated up to 190 degrees. Then from there, the potatoes were dipped inside. Then from there, the eating process continued till the golden brown color was formed. For microwaving, we used a limited level of oil. We used 2 ml of cooking oil, which was placed on a plate, smeared. Then from there, the potatoes were rubbed on the plate. Then the plate was introduced in the microwave for eating purposes. To ensure that there is uniform eating of the potatoes in the microwave, we ensure that they formed a single layer to ensure that all of them were reached by the waves in equal form. From that one, we did an analysis on the fat, which was done by Soxhlet method. We did an analysis on moisture, which was done by oven drying method. Also, ash, protein, and carbohydrate levels. On sensory evaluation, we used a 7-point hedonic method with a triangle test. In this case, we introduced our chips in a form that 2 of them were from a deep fried method, 1 of them was the other method. Then from there, we were able to ask the members whether there is a difference between the two. Then from there, they proceeded to other checks in terms of aroma, taste, color, and general liking of the chips. And in that case, these are the results from the project. In terms of deep fried, we can see the first one there is about fat. We had a percentage of 9.87 fat. In terms of microwave, we have 1.55. Then when we come to protein, we had 5.8. For microwave, we had 5.3. Moisture, we had 54. Microwave, we had 61. For ash, we had 2.37, 2.25. Yep. Then in this case, we can already see the differences in terms of fat content and moisture content. And this is as a result of the method that we used. In this case, when eating them in a microwave, the first thing, the waves, once they enter into the deep side of the potato, the outer layer forms a coating, a crust, which makes it possible for the inner side to get heated up or steamed up. So the layer formed prevents depositing of fat at the outer layer. Then when it comes to deep fried, it takes a lot of time before the layer is formed. So the water inside seeps outside first, then from there dampens the outer layer. Then as the process continues, the fat occupies the space as the process adds to the formation of the crust. Hence the high level of fat in our chips. In terms of sensory, we can see the general liking of the color, liking very much. It was uniform. Then as it goes down, most of the people like the deep fried chips, because already that's something that is outside there, so there is the issue of perception. Then when it comes to color, it happens that the deep fried chips were also liked very much. When it comes to taste, also the deep fried chips were liked very much, also down to general liking. But generally, we can easily say that most people liked both the type of chips, regardless of the cooking method which was used. And in conclusion, we can easily say that microwave processing method reduces the fat content in terms of the outcome, and also the processing time, because we were able to process our chips within 9 minutes for microwave and 12 minutes for deep fried method. Then deep fried chips were liked most in terms of texture than that of then microwaving method can be adopted to so that it can be able to produce low-fat chips to salvage lifestyle diseases such as diabetes, obesity, and other diseases. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared, for that presentation. Give him a clap. We can keep and reserve our questions for him when we are done. Our next presenter, Mahagayu, is not in, so we give the floor to Joshua and Dabora.
So, good morning. I'm Kirui Onesmus, and I'm presenting the effect of fermentation on chemical and microbial properties of liquid organic fertilizer from the Thornia diversifolia. We did this research with Mr. Thambura Joshua here in Meru University, and the Thornia, like you can see in that picture, is an annual that grows as a shrub around. It is mostly used as animal feeds indigenously, and with regard to research that has been done, it has been shown to have a rich nutritive content that is able to assist in crop production. Increased agricultural productivity that is determined by the use of fertilizers to ensure food security has been the norm, and soil fertility is a factor of production. The quality of agricultural production has been researched among other areas by the authors you can see there. Inorganic and organic fertilizers, that is areas where production is actually a factor. Majority of the small-scale farmers would prefer organic fertilizers or manures because of their low cost and availability. And out of this, that is where the Thonia comes in. That is the plant in question. And the usage of this has been documented in maize production and also in vegetable production. A lot of farmers are trying it even currently. And why the Thonia is that this plant is environmentally friendly, and it doesn't give a lot of residual toxins to the environment, and it is actually ideal for sustainable agricultural practices. And because of these effects, there seems to be a low adoption of this fertilizer in Kenya, especially due to knowledge gap and with regard to its usefulness and maybe the costs that are involved. Problem statement, like you can see, the organic fertilizer materials, the use of organic fertilizer materials has really, in the recent past, gained a lot of attraction with the farmers, maybe due to the fact that the inorganic fertilizers having negative effects, maybe on the soil and also on the environment. And attempts have been made to make the liquid organic fertilizer from the Thonia diversifolia to ease storage and even transport. Not a lot of information is known about the quality parameters of this LOF during storage. So the experiment that we did was to investigate the quality parameters of LOF storage for a period of 6 months at room temperature and also refrigerated temperature. Our objectives were to determine the effect of fermentation temperature on the chemical properties of the Thonia. Also to determine the effect of fermentation temperature on the microbial population in the Thonia LOF, and to evaluate the effect of the Thonia liquid organic fertilizer that is fermented at different temperatures on the kale crops. You can see the method or the methodology that we use to obtain the LOF. We obtain the Thonia leaves from the farm because it grows almost everywhere. And we were able to soak the leaves in water to ferment for 2 weeks with a leaf ratio of 1 to 10 leaf water ratio. And after that, the fermented extract was filtered and it was transferred to specimen chars, that is 36 in number. 18 was stored in a cabinet at room temperature, then 18 in the fridge at 5 degrees. But the efficacy of the LOF was tested on kale plants, that is sukuma wiki, because kales are fast growing and it's also common. You can see there we have the cabinet and we have the fridge. Total nitrogen were tested with the method there. Potassium, that, phosphorus, magnesium, calcium, and total reducing sugar and bacterial growth using the plate count agar, the fungi using the methods that you can see. These are the findings. The effect of fermentation temperature on the chemical parameters. I don't know if that is visible. The pH of LOF You can see increased in port cases of treatment, with Trum Sambo being more alkaline than the refrigerated treatment. And there was a significant change in LOF during fermentation, where the B value was less than 0.05. And freshly prepared LOF was slightly acidic at that pH, and attaining 788 and 7.1 at room and fridge temperatures. That is at the 6th month. This is consistent with the observation of that author, researcher, that organic manures increase soil pH while inorganic fertilizers decrease it. In both cases, the anaerobic fermentation occurred and is responsible for the increased pH. These are the chemical properties. There was observed reduction in concentration of the plant nutrients, and the deterioration of LOF was faster at room temperature. There was no significant change in the chemical properties. And one of the contradictions here was that nutrient availability increased with the length of fermentation of the organic manure. However, that did not define the length of the fermentation period. That is a graph on the chemical properties, the microbial properties. There was no significant change of microbial count in LOF. That was the case with the kales on the growth. And then in conclusion, the study established that the quality of LOF during storage deteriorated, and LOF at room temperature reduced in quality faster than the refrigerated one. And therefore, the quality of LOF is best when freshly prepared. Despite kales performing better when treated with room temperature, there was no significant growth difference with fridge of fermented LOF. So the study recommends further research on the effect of LOF concentration on crop growth to ensure optimum nutrients. I think that is it. So the research implication, Tithonia has the potential of being commercialized as a foliar and trenching organic fertilizer. So expiry date of LOF should not exceed 3 months. I think those were our findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirui, and the team for that presentation. Next, we have Professor Aremi. Prof, you have 2 presentations. Okay. I was going to combine all of them to follow each other. So it's okay. Okay. Magayu has not yet joined us. Magayu, not yet. Okay. She's organizing herself. Let me move to the next presenter as she does that. Nancy.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Nganga. I'm making a presentation on livestock layering along the Meru-Isiolo Migratory Corridor, a case study at Mudhara Ward in Tigania East Sub-County in Meru. Our supervisor was Dr. John Duita. Introduction. In Kenya, 80% of land mass is arid and semi-arid land, as of Amwata et al. 2015. Nomadic pastoralism is the main livestock production system in ASALs. In Africa, pastoralism contributes 10 to 44% of the GDP, according to Kailimo 2013. Pastoralists transport their animals on hoof in search of water, pasture, and market. Mudhara Ward is in Tigania East Sub-County and is along the migratory route for livestock from northeastern Kenya. The migratory route connects pastoralists to high-demand beef markets in Nairobi and other towns on the highlands. The Mudhara Ward's residents are agro-pastoralists, hence there is competition for resources, disease transmissions, and conflict with migrating herds. Problem statement. Mudhara Ward, being located along the migratory route, is put at danger of tick-borne diseases, as animals on transit send vectors such as ticks, which worsen the menace of tick-borne diseases. Scarcity of information on disease diagnosis, treatment, tick control poses a great danger to pastoralists under such high-risk exposure. Specific objectives. One was to assess the perception and knowledge of Mudhara Ward agro-pastoralists on diagnosis, preference, and management of tick-borne diseases, and also to describe the seasonal occurrence of tick-borne diseases and conflict-related losses. Material and methods, that is the map of Mudhara Ward in Tigania East. Data collection. A sample of 120 farms was selected and questionnaires administered to one of the adult respondents found in the homestead during the visit. Data was collected by use of structured questionnaires designed to elicit farmers' response to preferred method of diagnosis, seasonal variation, and preference of preferred treatment services and services providers. Also to check on occurrence of other constraints of cattle layering in Mudhara Ward, cattle rustling, and quality of veterinary services. Result and discussion. We have the total number of livestock owned by the 120 standing participants was 3960. Asked the question, who does the livestock disease diagnosis for them? 50% of those respondents did their own self-diagnosis. 15% preferred village elders, while 25% used private veterinaries, and 10% government vets. Number of farmers who could collectively diagnose each diseases. As you have seen, 50% saying they do self-diagnosis. So of the 50% who saying that they do self-diagnosis, they were posed with another question of how they were able to identify those diseases. There were several symptoms given. For anaplasmosis, it was yellow eyes, and those were the symptoms that they were supposed to identify to confirm that they know they can relate to anaplasmosis, but the symptoms were not arranged. So they could pick from a series of symptoms. To be able to confirm that one could diagnose anaplasmosis, at least they could give 2 symptoms, which is yellow eyes and dry ducts. East Coast fever was hypersalivation and enlarged lymph nodes. For babesiosis, it was red urine and weight loss. Heart water disease was high stepping gait, and abnormal chewing. Given those symptoms, of the 50% who said that they could do self-diagnosis, only 48% could relate those 2 symptoms to anaplasmosis. 32% would relate the symptoms to East Coast fever. 36% would relate to the symptoms of babesiosis. 32% would relate to the symptoms of high water disease. Proportion of farmers who had handled TBDs in their hands, either with self-diagnosis, diagnosis by the elders, private vet or government vets, 75%. East Coast fever was 60%. Babesiosis was 15%. Heart water disease was 5%. Those diseases were translated into the Meru so that they could relate with the diseases. Total numbers of animals lost to TBDs annually, as per those respondents, was 310 animals, of which 45% were animals lost to anaplasmosis, 34% were animals lost to East Coast fever. Babesiosis covered 3.8% of 310, while heart water disease was 16.2%. When posed with the question, who treat your sick livestock, 40% still did their own self-treatment of the animals, 25% preferred to use their local village elders, 25% used the private vets, while 10% went to government vets. Who influenced the choice of drugs for treating livestock? Now, this question was posed to the ones who are doing the self-treatment, and of that, 88% said that they'd use drugs of choice, while the rest chose drugs that they could be advised from the agrovets. Periodical increase of tick-borne diseases. On occurrence of tick-borne diseases, it was observed that during the month of October to December, there was high increase of tick-borne diseases compared to other seasons. This happens to be the long rain season in the area. Asked on how frequent they control ticks on their livestock, 55% saying they just control once in a while. 40% would do tick control routine on weekly basis. Loss of animals to cattle rustling, which was one of the constraints that affected the Mudara Ward pastoralist. A total of 546 animals had been lost from the respondent, of which 60% was cattle, 27% goats, and 13% of sheep. In what seasons the incidence of cattle rustling was common? That happened to be the month of December, November, December, and January. That was expected, as they would say, that it's because of the animals had already recovered from the drought during the dry season of September, from May to September dry season, and also because of the loss maybe to tick-borne diseases in the neighboring community. Summary of key findings. Agro-pastoralists of Mudara ward rely mainly on themselves, 50% for diagnosis of livestock diseases, with another 15% relying on village elders. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that insightful presentation. Please, I know you have many questions. Write them down. Nancy will handle them. Are you ready now to present? Okay.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Jelan Armstrong, and I'm taking you through the production and physicochemical analysis of sugarcane wine. And this was the research that I was doing on the project, and my supervisor, Professor Joshua Arimi. Sugarcane are mainly cultivated for the production of sugar and other valuable products such as molasses. And sugarcane juice have been shown to have some health benefits according to other researchers, such as reduction of inflammation. Sugarcane juice has composition, according to other researchers, of 70 to 75% water, 13 to 15% sucrose, and 10 to 15% fiber. The statement of the problem: despite high sugarcane production, currently there is no sugarcane juice wine in the country. Most of the wine is mainly produced from the grapes and other fruits with high sugar. Therefore, coming up with a wine from the sugarcane can be used as an alternative. The main objective is to produce and analyze the physicochemical properties of sugarcane juice wine. The specific objectives: the first one is to analyze the pH, the titratable acidity, specific gravity, alcohol content, Brix level, and even the color of the wine. The other specific objective was to conduct the sensory evaluation of the wine from the sugarcane. Hypothesis: sugarcane juice is an appropriate substrate to produce wine with good physicochemical and sensory properties. The wine making process: sugarcane juice was obtained from the local market. It was filtered and recorded as 10 kgs. The Brix level of the pulp was determined using a refractometer, and the juice was pasteurized while adding sugar to raise Brix levels to 20 degrees Brix. The pulp was cooled to 30 degrees, and 100 grams of the yeast, which represent 2% of the yeast, was added and left to ferment at room temperature. The following parameters were determined: at an interval of 4 days during the fermentation period. The pH using a pH meter, specific gravity using pyknometer, titratable acidity using titration method, Brix levels using a refractometer, alcohol content using pyknometer method, distillation method, and after that you use the pyknometer to find the alcohol content. Specific gravity and alcohol content determination. So distillation method was done according to AOAC methods, whereby 100 ml of the wine was measured and placed into a 300 ml distillation flask. 50 ml of the distilled water was added. The flask was then attached to a vertical condenser by the means of the tube. Then almost 100 ml of the distillate was collected and now diluted to the original amount of the sample. The specific gravity was now determined using a pyknometer method, whereby you take the sample, you fill the pyknometer method, then you find the weight of the sample. You also fill the pyknometer with the distilled water, then you divide the weight of the sample divided by the weight of the distilled water. Then the specific gravity that will be obtained, you now go and look for the alcohol content that is corresponding with the specific gravity. There is a table, an alcohol conversion table, which is showing the alcohol content for a specific gravity at a given temperature of the sample. The temperature of the sample was 26 degrees centigrade. The color was assessed using a color meter, and the L, A, and B values were recorded. Sensory evaluation was performed with 10 untrained men and women who were above 18 years old, whereby 25 ml of the sample was given in a single session at a temperature of 10 degrees centigrade using a disposable transparent cups. The cups were labeled in 3-digit numbers, and the panelists evaluated the sample using a structured hedonic of 7 points. The parameters that were assessed were appearance, taste, aroma, and overall acceptance. The research was carried out in duplicates, and each parameter was analyzed in triplicates. The mean and the standard deviation was calculated, and the results were presented in form of a graph. So that is the change in color during fermentation. L values from 0 days of fermentation to 16 days of fermentation, the L values increased from 99.26 to 99.56. Then F values from negative 0.09 to negative 0.06. Then B values from negative 0.1 to negative 0.06. So the F values and the B values were decreasing during fermentation period because the yeast have the properties of absorbing the color pigments, and due to the reduction of the color pigments, that is now which lead to the increase in the L value, which is the lightness of the sample. The pH during fermentation, it decreased from 5 to 3 as the fermentation was going on. This is because during fermentation, the sugar was converted into alcohol content, into alcohol, which now have high acidity. That now leads to the decrease in pH. Acidity increased due to increase in alcohol during fermentation. It increased from 0.05 to 0. It increased from 0.05 to 0.045. Then specific gravity decreased from 1 to 0.9. That is because the alcohol has been produced, which is less dense than the original sample. The alcohol content increased because the sugar has been converted into alcohol through the fermentation. And the Brix also decreased because that sugar has been utilized by the microbiome during fermentation to produce alcohol. So the Brix decreased from 20 to 3. So there was no complete utilization of sugar. This may be due to the increase in alcohol content, which inhibits the activity of the yeast. Sensory evaluation. So in sensory evaluation, 75% of the panelists liked the appearance very much, while 25% of them liked moderately. So the appearance was liked among the properties, that is appearance, color, and aroma. Appearance was rated higher than aroma and taste and overall acceptance. In conclusion, can be suggested that sugarcane juice can be used to produce wine of good quality and alcohol content of approximately 12% within a period of 12 days. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that good presentation. I think the last presentation is by Professor Remy with Daniel Rovero. It is you. Plant-based milk, are they healthier or more nutritious compared to animal-based milk? Lynette.
Okay, it's fine. Good afternoon. Nowadays, if you walk to supermarket stores or retail stores in search of milk, you will find that we have a dizzying amount of products that you'd have to choose from. So we find that in retail stores, you'll find dairy milk, but we also have plant-based milk products currently in supermarkets. So which milk is actually best for you? My name is Lynette Mutwiri, and I'm going to trigger a conversation on plant-based milks. We want to see, are they healthier or more nutritious compared to cow milk? This work is from the Department of Food Science, together with Professor Remy Munene Mbae and Daniel Waweru. So we'll first look at the milk consumption rates in Kenya, and we see that dairy consumption in Kenya is currently on an upward trend, with Kenya recording one of the highest per capita milk consumption rates in Africa. Additionally, we see that there is an increasing interest in plant-based milk alternatives to dairy products in Kenya. And why these shifts have been seen has been recorded in previous studies, and it has been linked to health concerns, so allergenicity issues, shift in consumer preferences, availability, ethical and animal welfare surrounding the production of milk and meat and other dairy products, and also then environmental sustainability. So considering the milk consumption trends and also the paucity of information that we have in terms of systematic comparisons of cow milk and plant-based milk, we sought to investigate and make a comprehensive comparison in terms of the spectrum of both macronutrients and micronutrients that are in various plant-based milk alternatives available in the Kenyan market, and then to compare it with full-fat cow's milk. So this is important, for example, to do this review, to compare the nutritional contents of the plant-based milk alternatives, so that when we are making recommendations, we are able to make informed recommendations and also assess beforehand potential impacts on consumer nutrient supply. So when we are talking about plant-based or non-dairy milk alternatives, what are we referring to? These are fluids that are extracted from plant material as a result of size reduction. So to turn a plant into something resembling milk, it must either be soaked, drained, rinsed, milled into a thick paste, essentially a slurry, which can then be milled or dried into a flour. It can then be fortified or flavored, and then we find that the resulting fluid will imitate cow's milk, both in appearance and in consistency. For our data collection, to identify the milk products and plant-based milk products available in the Kenyan market, we collected data from the websites of 6 major retail supermarkets in March 2023. The major retail supermarkets are considered as a factor of the proportion of the total market share they have in Kenya. So we collected data on the products from websites of Naivas, Carrefour, Quickmart, Clean Shelf, Eastmart, and Chandarana Food Plus. In terms then of the milk and plant-based milk alternatives that we were able to get, we populated a database from the details, from the information of these products that we got from the retailers or manufacturers' websites. In populating the database, we were very keen on our aim to check on macronutrient content, micronutrient content also. And so energy, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, fibers, vitamin B12, vitamin B2, whatever was listed in the nutrition information section. So in our results, we were able to see a barrage of options of plant-based milk alternatives that are available in the Kenyan market. And we went further to categorize them in our database. So we categorized what is available in terms of cereal-based milks, where we were able to see oat and rice milk. We also saw legume-based milks available in the market, so soy and peanut milk. We had nut-based milk. Under this, we classified almonds and coconuts. We also had pseudo-cereal-based milks. Quinoa milk was placed under this classification. So botanically, it's milk from grains that do not follow under the grass category or cereal category. And then we had mixed categories, which had a combination of milks from either of the classes mentioned before. So common in the supermarkets that we sampled, I will not go through the process of how to make the different milks, because initially I said I explained how to derive plant-based milks. But what we commonly saw in the markets were, for example, oat milks, and why then oat milks are important and why they would gain traction in Kenyan markets would be because of their good quality protein and the good balance of amino acids that they have. So additionally, oats also contain beta-glucans, which are a functionally active component, and they assist in gut function, especially in gastrointestinal transit time. The next most common milk was soy milk, and why then it's also found a lot in Kenyan markets is because it's a good source of monounsaturated fatty acids, oleic acid, and also it's a rich source of polyunsaturated fatty acids, linoleic acid and also alpha-linolenic acid. Also, pseudo-cereal-based milks available in the Kenyan market, quinoa milk, which has been associated a lot with anti-obesity activity and also anti-skin aging activities from previous studies. So to bring you back to focus, we were really interested in the macronutrients and micronutrients, and then a comparison between these two products. So first, I'll also show in terms of price. We were able to see that plant-based milks cost 4 to 4 times more than cow's milk. Cow's milk, which was found to retail at around 120 Kenya shillings per liter, around $1 USD. And when you look at the pricing, if it's visible to you, you'll find that most plant-based milks retailed at around higher than 500 shillings. So just a table to show the nutritional facts. So in terms of macronutrients, we find that when you look at the table, the first column for dairy milk, we find that dairy was the most nutrient dense. Almond scored lowly in terms of protein and carbohydrate content, and soy milk is the one that almost mimicked dairy milk. So we also went further to look at nutritional information given on micronutrients, but also to remind you that most of these micronutrients do not occur naturally in the milk. It is as a result of fortification. So of importance, of keen interest to us was vitamin B12, which is essentially from animal sources, but we also see that it was in low levels in the plant-based milks. And B12 is important, especially to vegetarians, and because of its role in the formation of new red blood cells. So we also looked at why people are moving to these alternatives in the Kenyan market. It's because essentially first of how milk is treated. So in terms of full-fat milk, most people will not desire the separation of milk, especially fresh milk, which is not homogenized. And secondly, because of lactose, which is the biggest biological reason why we have shifts from cow's milk to plant-based alternatives. And lactose is the sugar found in milk, and we have almost 68% of the world's population being lactose intolerant, meaning they do not have lactase to break down lactose to assist in milk milk digestion. So in conclusion, from the small results that we show, are then these plant-based milk alternatives any good? From our results, we show that cow milk is more nutritious, especially in terms of macronutrient component, and also remembering the dietary guidelines that are recommended to have at least 2 glasses of milk per day, but then this is also based on nutritional requirements for calcium and vitamin D for different age groups. Secondly, we find that consumers may be paying a higher price for less nutritious products, and we recommend that complete replacement of cow milk with plant-based milk without then modifying overall diets may lead to nutritional deficiencies of some key nutrients and in some vulnerable groups. So in terms of the way forward from this paper, we hope, for example, to have actual nutrient determination in the laboratory as opposed to nutrient labeling, which was done for this study, and also conducting of efficacy trials to try and do an objective comparison between the two. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette, for that good presentation. We are recording questions. As Magayu come in, because we don't want to interfere with the afternoon program. No. So I think we will take questions now. So I think it's okay. I can ask presenters to come forward here, then so that they can take their questions and address them. Those of us who have presented in the afternoon, I mean in that morning session. Questions? Where do we start? We start with Jared. Jared, question for Jared? Anyone? We forgot what. Okay.
Thank you so much. Jared, this is your question. That was a good way of preparation of chips, an alternative way of preparation, I think, which is not common, because I don't know anywhere in this town where you're going to see microwaved chips. But there's a comment that you made in the conclusion that I want you to review or tell us whether it's factual, where you concluded that actually you recommended the microwaved chips for people with diabetes and the people who are fearing obesity. Is fat the only source of carbohydrates? Because even when you analyze the carbohydrates there, the energy levels were quite high. So wouldn't it be misleading to say you can go ahead and eat these chips now, you'll not become fat, and you'll not get sugars in your blood? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jared, for the good presentation on the chips, the microwaved and the fried. My concern is almost similar to the one for Prof. You recommended that the microwaved chips have lower kind of fat as compared to the fried. But my fear is one. Okay, microwaved foods are common in urban centers and settings. But you go to rural areas, you'll find people are kind of averse to microwaved food products. So how do you convince them that these are a better way of preparing these chips and is more nutritious than the traditional one? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jared, for that good presentation. My question was on the moisture content of your microwaved chips was higher than that of the deep fried chips, and I was wondering if that affected the texture of your chips in terms of crunchiness, because I understand as a consumer that's what I would want in my chips. So will the microwave chips give this particular feel in terms of palatability? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jared. And I'm sorry I didn't listen to the whole presentation, but just a pointer. I'm wondering, how much would that chips cost, a microwave chips? Because to buy the equipment or electricity used. And another maybe comment is whether you know in the market we have a fryer which is currently not using the cooking oil. It's in the market currently. So would it be a better alternative than a microwave? Because again, even the volume in microwaves, very small. So for example, if I come to maybe buy chips and we are 10 of us, how economical that would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we move on to the next presenter? That was Kirui. Yes, if you have questions for Kirui, please.
Thank you very much, Kirui, for the presentation of liquid fertilizer. I think in the methodology you mentioned, you analyzed some microelements or minerals, I think magnesium, using AAS. I would wish to know what was the cost and in which lab was that carried out. Thank you.
I also want to ask that question. So, first, why did you select Tithonia? And did you do fermentation or decomposition? And what was your control in this case? I mean, what did you compare your results with or standard in that case? Another question for Kirui. I think they are noting it. Okay, someone? Good.
Thank you for your presentation. I just noticed that you did the test on kills. So I just wanted to know, would it have a different effect if it was done on, I think it's almost in line with the control thing, but if you used a different, you mentioned you used kills because it is a common vegetable and grows fast. Would it have acted differently on probably other plants here?
Good. Thank you for that question. Any question to Nancy? Any question to Nancy? Yes. I bet there are many questions there. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation, Nancy. So my question goes on some of the data that you showcased on the losses of animals, the deaths of the animals. So I would like to know, when you are interviewing these farmers, did they have any form of records for you to confirm that if this farmer says that they lost 10 cows, those are the cows that they lost? Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I would like to know, in your opinion, why are the government vets not approached for diagnosis and treatment of these tick-borne diseases? And also, what method was used to determine the sample size of the farmers that you were interviewing? Thank you.
Thank you. Question? Okay.
One question for Joan Chelagat. You had mentioned you used untrained persons for the sensory acceptance. What could be the reason? Maybe you can clarify.
Joan. Question for Nancy? Question for Nancy? Question for Nancy? Question for Nancy? Dr. Bonyo? Oh, okay.
Thank you for the presentation, Nancy. In your objectives, you were talking about tick-borne diseases, but you also said most of the farmers were self-diagnosing. How sure are you that the data you've gotten was actually from tick-borne diseases that have caused the animals to die? Thank you.
Very well. Nancy, I think I found your presentation very informative. My question is, have you made that presentation to the participants after you corrected? Have you gone back to make that presentation to them, or even to any government official? You can respond to that one later. Are we moving on? Well, good. Joan, any question to Joan? Already she has one question.
Thank you, Joan. You are using sugarcane juice to make wine, and just following up on the untrained panelists, are there any instructions that you gave to these panelists, or you simply called them and gave them the juice? So, okay. And then, considering the current price of sugar,
whether is that beer or wine? I don't know the difference. Maybe you should tell us, now that you're saying that sugarcane has never been used for that brewing process, but in the villages they normally used it. I don't know which process is it. And educate us, because we're here also to learn. Another question is, you mentioned of a pH change during the process of fermentation, from sugars to alcohol. And from my basic chemistry, I know that alcohol, OH is more basic than acidic. Why is it becoming more, is alcohol acidic? Why is it becoming acidic? What did I see in that graph? Maybe you indicate me further there. So the increase of acidity during process of fermentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I would like to know which variety you used, because there are various varieties which also have different breeds. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Joan, because I taught you, the data you have shown us on color is raw data, A, B, and L. You should have presented it in form of hue angle or chroma or color index. Why did you decide to present it that way? Then the other question, it would have been good if you understand that. For an example is red wine parameters or characteristics. I think then we would have understood where you are talking or where you are coming from. I didn't see you having any standard. Another question for Joan?
This is not to you, Joan. This is to Jared. You said you microwaved for 9 minutes and then the deep fry was for 12 minutes. That time difference, was it not enough to influence the color, which could have been one of the reasons people prefer deep fried as opposed to microwave? So I think it sounds like you are a bit biased to make microwave look like it's a quick method. Maybe you can elaborate on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can move to any question for Rinette? Yeah.
That was a good presentation. I just wanted a clarification on the amino acids. You said that there's a good proportion of amino acids in the plant-based milk, I think specifically the oat milk. And I wanted to understand, does this mean that it contains all the amino acids or what? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lynette. That presentation was really eye-opening, and I would like some clarification here. You said that in Africa, I think per capita consumption is higher in Kenya, or Kenya is among the highest the countries with higher per capita consumption. So I would like to know why. Why do we have such a high per capita? And then there was a soybean milk, which I think had a higher or was mimicked cow's milk more than other milks. So, and in those packages, did you see them listing anti-nutrients? Because we know that in addition to other things, soybean has more anti-nutrients compared to the other milks, but I don't know if they list. Just asking. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Lynette. Maybe soon we'll be turning to plant source of milk, but you gave a disclaimer that it's expensive. So mind your pocket, and particularly in this time of hand economic situation. But I want you to clarify this data, this information about the people, 68% being lactose intolerance. Isn't that, is it in Kenya or elsewhere? Is that the true presentation within the population?
Thank you, Lynette. I also, after your presentation, and you've shown us the characteristics of the cow milk, soya milk, nutritional characterization. Now I have a question. What is milk?
A good presentation, everybody. Maybe to Lynette first. You've talked about the plant-based milk being low in B12. Was there any advisory on those packets to the consumers on the same, so that they can know the proportions to get, so that they can get the good levels of B12, the recommended levels? And maybe to Onesimus, I saw in your slides Tithonia was repeated a lot, but it wasn't italicized on some of those slides. And there is a slide you had findings, results, and discussions. Is there a difference between findings and results?
Well, I think with that, yes, Dr. Bono.
Thank you. My question is directed to Jared. How did you analyze your data? What were you comparing? Were they means?
I can ask. Mine goes to Lynette. It was a very good presentation, quite enlightening. Your conclusion was like cow milk is still superior in terms of nutrients as opposed to the plant-based. Now that we currently have and the main problem is lactose intolerance. Now that we have the cow milk that is lactose-free, do you think nutritionally, if you gave us that kind of nutritional information, could it be the better way to go than the plant-based? Thank you.
I think we will start tackling them, starting with Jared. When you exhaustively cover your part, you can sit down.
Thank you for the comments and the questions. I'll answer them accordingly. Let me start with Dr. Dhambure about my recommendation about chips related to obesity and other lifestyle diseases. I can comment like I think fat as one of the components in chips. At one point, fat is easily deposited in the body as compared to carbohydrates, which were there in my slides, almost the same in terms of microwaved and deep fried. So the easy conversion of fats to deposits in the body makes it easier for them to be related to obesity as compared to others. So it's easy for them, and obesity is one of the risk factors which leads to other conditions like obesity, diabetes and heart diseases. Yeah, thank you. Another point was about fat and calories or carbohydrates. In that case, I think it's almost the same question. I think basically I've answered it. In terms of convincing the people in the rural areas to absorb or use the method in terms of preparation of their products, I think it's changes come and we advocate for them. People take them in different ways, but as time goes by, things change and they all take up the idea. So it's a slow method, but as time goes by, it will be advocated for and it will be consumed by many. Another question was about moisture content and the crunchiness. During the period of processing, at a point of 9 minutes, and that question I think we'll answer Doreen and Dr. Rebecca's question. During the process of microwaving, at a point of 9 minutes, exceeding the 9 minutes led to burning up of the chips, so they formed the black deposits on the coating, so it affects the quality characteristics in terms of color. So 9 minutes was the best, I think. Then in terms of question by Dr. Mariga, in comparison of between fryers and microwave, I think in terms of quantities, we can say yes, fryers are better in that case. But in terms of there are those who already have their microwaves at their homes. So microwave can chip in faster than going for a fryer, which is mostly for many people. And also in that case, maybe comparison of the nutrient composition between microwave, fryers, and deep fry can be advocated for, so that maybe checking in terms of the nutrient components and the combustion will assist it at one point or another. Then on the last question about my analysis, I compared the means and standard deviation to come up with the results. Thank you.
Jared.
Jared, I think Dr. Rebecca.
Jared, I wanted you to, or rather I wanted you to drop your recommendation on diabetes just based on the fat content. Because as far as diet is concerned, it's not only the fat. The fat goes a long way, you're saying, to obesity and then influencing diabetes. But potato on its own is very high. It's a starchy food. So on its own, it can influence blood sugar levels. So don't try to convince us on that recommendation on diabetes. Thank you.
It's a good recommendation.
It's a good alternative. It's a good alternative. I think those two and questions for Jared, you are contented with the answer? Thank you. You can interact with him later. Yes, Kirui.
Thank you. I'll start with the question on why did we select Thithonia and not any other plant or shrub. And I would say that, like we said, that Thithonia is largely available, and documented evidence show that Thithonia is rich in plant nutrients, and specifically nitrogen, which has around 3.5% of nitrogen, which is quite high for plants. Number two, Thithonia is easily decomposable to release nutrients. So it is not a plant that takes a long time before it can decompose to give or release nutrients. Yes, we did fermentation, and I said that the fermentation that we did was in a ratio of 1 to 10. That is 1 kilo of Thithonia leaves to 10 liters of water. I think that is it.
I'm wondering, when you say it is easily decomposable,
yes.
So you make us, what is the percentage of cellulose, hemicelluloses in their cell wall compared to other plants, and also lignin and those other materials that perhaps would delay cellular decomposition. So at least when you say it is easily decomposable, that's a global and generalized statement. Then I wonder if I go and pick these leaves from the plants here and then compare them with Thithonia, I will see Thithonia decompose. What is it that makes then Thithonia easily decomposable? We need to tell us that and show us data from that than just a generalized statement. It could be true, but then I wish you followed it up by that it has higher percentage of cell wall deposits like cellulose or hemicellulose than other plants that we know. Then that way we understand it. Otherwise, we think it's a general statement that is not well founded.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe if Joshua has a point on that, if there is, maybe you can.
Something to think about.
Yes. Yes. There was also another question on would it have been probably different if it was done on a different crop? Because the efficacy was tested on kales. And we said that kales are fast growing. Number two, they are also easily, they are available. And with regard to the plant parameters, I think it is easy to take with the parameters on the kales. I wouldn't say that it would not be a bit different with other plants. It could be. There are other possibilities of trying Tithonia LOF on other plants, but that is for further trial that can be tried, I would say that. There was something on the difference between the findings and the results. I think the findings or the results would almost mean the same thing. And would say in our findings or in our results, we gave the data that we found, and I think we would explain the results. I want to refer the question on magnesium test to Joshua, the AAS, the cost and the lab, the cost involved and the lab where it was carried out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirui, for answering those questions, my partner in this research. I'll answer that question about the analysis. This analysis, particularly with this analysis on nutrients, that is the elements which were there in Tithonia, we did it in University of Nairobi, chemistry lab. That's where we sourced for AAS. The cost was met by the university. This project was carried out during the core for research, and we did it there, and the cost was met by the university, and we are grateful that MAST assisted us in this analysis. So we did it at the University of Nairobi laboratory.
I would like to know the cost per sample. I'm interested. Not the cost was given by the university. What was the cost per sample?
Thank you. Let's meet after this. We will consult the documents.
You did not answer the question on standard. What were you comparing with Tithonia? Standard control.
Well, when we did this extraction, which was through the process of actually anaerobic fermentation, I'm trying to answer you the area one about whether the composition took place. Within 2 weeks, the foliage decomposed, and we were able to make a liquid out of it, the liquid fertilizer. Now, the control, we tested it during the when we were treating the kales in the field. This is where we tested the effectiveness of these LOF, where we treated some kales and others, we never treated them. They were not treated with anything, so we compared the growth. And that's how we said that we saw the efficacy of Tithonia LOF.
So you did not compare your liquid fertilizer with the liquid fertilizers in the market today, because there are many. There are nutrient profiles and your Tithonia profiles. You didn't do that?
We did not.
Okay. Next is Nancy.
Yes. The first question was if the loss of animals through death was recorded. In our questionnaires, we counted on pastoralist recall on occurrence of diseases and occurrence of death. Given the close relationship of pastoralists to their animals, you can be sure that it's rare for them to miss such an important information. The second question was why government vets were not available. Given that that is a pastoralist area, is a semi-arid area. Mudara ward is a semi-arid area, and that's why you find that there is very less involvement of both private and government vets because of the distance. In fact, even when we were collecting data, we would rarely find those handlers in their homes. You would go to a homestead and then we'd be taken where those handlers were rearing the animals because they had to go in search of green patches. And given that, I think that would, contribute to the unavailability of veterinary services, and two, also that there are not enough government or private animal health practitioners in the region. Another question was how the community were able to diagnose the diseases. In the arid and semi-arid areas, there are community disease reporters who are recommended by the government to report diseases that occurs as the pastoralists go on their herding. But given the same, you find that out of the 50% of those who did diagnosis of the diseases, we find that between 48 and 32% only would relate just those two symptoms to a certain diseases. And knowing that those two symptoms are not specific for just those two diseases, so there is a need for differential diagnosis. And from that research, we found a lot of misdiagnosis and false treatment of diseases, and also misuse of drugs. So in our recommendation, we were recommending that the government would increase the number of practitioners in the arid and semi-arid areas, and also to sensitize the pastoralists on danger of misuse of drugs, and also maybe it would be an opening for further research on the same misuse of veterinary drugs in the arid and semi-arid areas. Whether this research has been used for further by the consumer, we are not yet to that, but we are moving towards that in speed. Thank you.
Question been answered? Exhaustively? Yes, Lorraine.
It is the availability of the government's vets in the region. No, they are less in numbers in the area.
Yes, John.
Okay, I'll start with the question on the reason for using the untrained personnel during sensory evaluation. The reason is because I selected those people who are used to wine, so they already know about the wine. Then during sensory evaluation, I only provided for the basic rules of the sensory. The basic rules like do not talk to each other when you are doing evaluation. Yeah. Then the other question is about the cost effective, because the sugar now really is very expensive. But in the production of wine, already sugarcane juice already have sugar. So we add just a little amount of sugar to raise the bricks. In fact, the bricks of the sugarcane juice was 13%. Then I raised to 20 degrees bricks. So I worked on 10 kgs of the sugarcane juice. Then the sugar that I used was around 750 grams. So when you calculate it, I don't think it is going to be expensive because the wine is not cheap as such.
John, don't worry. We're not Mumias in Meru. So we can, all of it, all our sugarcane you can use for wine making.
Yeah, another question is whether the sugarcane, that is it a wine or a beer? Because there is a Muratina. Me, I'm not aware about the Muratina. I don't know whether the alcohol content of the Muratina. But what I know is that a beer have 5% less alcohol content. So when it is 6% and above to 20, we categorize it as a wine. So it is a wine, not a beer. If it is 20% and above to 40, if it could have been more than 20, it's a spirit. So it's a wine. Yeah, the variety that was used. So I was not able to specify about the variety of the sugarcane that was used because I just went to the local market and I purchased the sugarcane juice that was already prepared. Yeah, it's in Makutano. It's also, there is also a place in Kianjai. Yeah.
Did you check whether this was 100% pure sugarcane juice or some kind of alcoholated juice or something? Another sugar was added before you added yours?
No. I just went there. Then they ordered the sugarcane. When I was there, then they grind, then I obtained juice. I could not go and just take the juice that was already prepared because nowadays adulteration. Yeah. Because people add sugar, they can give you even water, add sugar. So I could make sure that it is the sugarcane.
So when you write methodology, make sure you give details of how you say you bought, and now we know you bought. Sugarcane was bought, crushed when you were there.
Yeah. Another question was on the category, the type of the wine, whether it is red, whether it is red or white wine. So I didn't mention, but it is a white wine. Somebody can ask why it is a white wine. Yeah, because red wine, when you are preparing red wine, we use all the pulp, including the skin of the fruits and everything. We crush, then we ferment when it has all the yeah. But in white wine, we only use the juice. We extract the juice. So it is a white wine, though I didn't mention.
If I use red grapes,
yeah,
and I remove the skin and use only the juice, will it be red wine or white wine?
The juice alone.
The wine. If I use the juice of red wine, red grapes, without using the skin, will that wine be red or white?
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll go and look for that. Yes.
I know you are done. I was just curious. Who are your participants? You say the people who drink wine. Where did you sample them from?
From the university.
These students here?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You did not answer my question on the EU angle and the prop. Why are you using the raw data?
Maybe I will go and work for that. Okay.
EU angle, chroma, or color will give us more information on actually whether this one is two ones red or two ones another color. EU angle will always be the best way.
Oh, thank you, Chair. you wanted me to respond. I think Dr. Mariga is around, is more qualified on this than I am. I think he can respond, but normally, I think beers are made from cereals mainly, and wines are made from plant-based material like fruits. But I think you can give Mariga.
Thank you so much, and Joan, that was a good presentation. Now, Dambora, I know there's Muratina made from even honey, yeah? So I don't know your Muratina is made from what? Yeah, sugarcane. Then I think we can just call it an alcoholic beverage. And for Joan, if you remove the skins from red grapes, you get wine which is almost red but not red, and we call it rose wine. We call it rose wine. So, yeah. But for the sugarcane, I think we can just call it wine, because for the red, white, rose, those are made from grapes.
So I will address the comments and questions. First of all, on soybean milk and it being a mimic of cow milk. One, in terms of its protein quality, so the good amino acid balance. So when you look at amino acid balances in terms of the amount of essential amino acids versus the non-essential amino acids in the milk, we have at least 3 in soy milk. Don't ask me to mention the names now, I won't remember it by heart. But that's what the good amino acid balance was referring to. So then there was a question on whether we have the anti-nutrients listed in the packaging, because then the anti-nutrients would be inhibitory to absorption of, for example, calcium or iron in the milk. Sadly, the anti-nutrients are not listed. And that's why, in terms of our way forward, we suggested in our manuscript that we have more laboratory work and also efficacy trials to actually see the effect of any present anti-nutrients, as opposed to what we did in this study, which was nutrition, obtaining data from nutrition labeling. Then there was a question on comment on the per capita consumption of milk and why this is so. We have data that shows that in most developing countries, or let me say low and middle income countries, we have pockets of people who have increasing incomes and also increasing awareness in terms of nutrition. So people tend to consume more animal-based foods as opposed to what they were consuming previously, and this is one of the reasons why we see increased per capita consumption of not only milk but also meat products. Then we showed that we have 68% of lactose intolerance reported. This shows that every 2 in 3 people are lactose intolerant if we translate it in fractions. This was a global prevalence, and we'd say sometimes lactose intolerant does not have to exhibit itself with the full-blown symptoms. Sometimes we have people with mild lactose intolerance, and sometimes they do not keenly, for example, they do not think much of it, but the 68% is a global statistic. I do not have specific numbers for African countries and Kenyan countries, but we find that there are high rates of lactose intolerance also in Africans being captured, but I don't have the prevalence at the moment. Then there was a question of what is milk. I'd say long time ago, or what I used to know, milk used to be secretions, for example, from mammary glands. But with trends in food science, in technologies, it's a bit more confusing in the sense that, for example, from the scope of our study, we stated milks from plants, for example, to be plants that have undergone size reduction, for example, and then had water added to them. So we have moved away from the traditional definition, but as you'll also notice, when we refer to milk, it still goes to cow's milk. But we have, based on new trends, new innovations, different meanings. But always when we talk about an alternative milk source, we'd have to add an adjective, for example, like we say plant-based milks. So I'd say it's a bit confusing also. Mm-hmm.
Light wheat milk because people have an mentality that the milk is very good and nutritious. So you can call it in white milk, like wheat now. Maybe in 5 years we'll be calling very light wheat milk also.
I hear you, but then I think also then as peers, in a certain field, you agree on what, you have certain parameters, for example, to define. So at the moment, we have certain parameters that describe what plant-based milk is and the processes that it has to have passed through for it to be called as such. If it comes to a time that this happens, then, well, I think it would be valid at that moment. Oh, we have a Kenyan, okay. Thank you for the addition. So then there was also a comment on the vitamin B12, considering that it's not naturally found in plant-based milks, and that if it's found, it's then in the fortified ones. There was a question on whether there is an advisory on packets. We do not have any advisory on these packets at the moment in terms of B12. The only advisories we have is in terms of allergens, mostly if they contain nuts or not. So I think this would be a challenge to then food scientists, food technologists in terms of labeling and also in terms of the information that they add on packets, that this would be a good recommendation to add, and especially in terms of recommended intakes, for example. So we take that as a comment. And then there was also the observation that we have lactose-free milk that is currently available. So we also acknowledge, because during our search we were able to find currently 3 brands retailing in Kenya, I think 2 from Brookside and 1 from KCC. So in terms of recommendations, Meru Central now, okay. Okay. So I have information that we also have one from Meru Central who are here attending the conference, I think outside. So if we have different reasons why then people will consume plant-based milks, one of them being the presence of lactose. So from my opinion, I would suggest, for example, consumption of this lactose-free milk first before considering the plant-based milks if the issue of not consuming milk was lactose. Yeah, but also we need to remember it comes at a higher cost, a bit higher cost than than milk itself. Yeah, I'd say this. Heating, yeah.
So just simple pressing remove more than 70%. So processing methods do quite a number of
anti-nutrients.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have found the end of this session. We want to thank all the participants for helping us give. So the afternoon session begins at 2, and we will have the following with us in the afternoon: Dr. Kennedy Gashoka with Salawadili. Then we have Francis Gule. Could one of them be around with us? Ngule, characterization of factors influencing dairy milk. Maybe they are coming in the afternoon. Then we have Philip, K. Malete. Philip is with us. Thank you for being with us. Then we have Professor Lemi again. He's here with us. Then we have the last presentation again, Francis Ngule again. Oh, is this a repetition? If you have, this is a repetition. Characterization of factors influencing dairy milk production in Como. Characterization of factors influencing dairy milk production in Como. It is a repetition. It is a repetition. So we request Philip and those of us who will be there in the afternoon session to deposit their presentation with the IT team. And we do it in good time. Then we will save some time for the afternoon session. Otherwise, I want to thank you. So we break for lunch and we come back exactly at 2 to start the next session. Thank you. I'm told we can leave our items here. They are safe. Okay.